Strange wonders on Christmas night. Long ago, in the Franconian lands of Bavaria, two fateful miracles occurred on the holy Christmas night. One of these miracles befell a farmer who lived alone on the edge of the village of Riedenheim, where the dark forest already pressed against his homestead. People said that strange signs would become visible on that night, and so the farmer gazed out into the cold darkness with an anxious heart. Little did he suspect that one of these Christmas night wonders would seal his fate. Shortly before midnight, the farmer went to his barn, where he kept two extraordinary large oxen for the heavy fieldwork. Since childhood, he had heard the old belief that at the beginning of the holy Christmas night, when the church bell strikes 12, a divine miracle occurs. The animals would speak in the language of human beings, and whoever listened quietly enough could understand every word as though spoken by people. Driven by irrepressible curiosity, the farmer wished at last to hear with his own ears what discourse his cattle would hold on this night. The barn lay still. Only the breath of the mighty beast could be heard. He crouched before them, and when the oxen lowered their heads, he seized the decisive moment to crawl unseen beneath the feeding trough. There he remained, his breath shallow, his knees trembling with cold and tension. Then the distant ringing of the church bell began outside, echoing through the cold night like a call from another world. Midnight had come. Christmas night had begun. The farmer pressed himself closer against the wooden boards, fully aware that with the 12th stroke, the miracle would begin. And as the bell struck 12, and its final tone faded across the snow-covered fields, the unimaginable occurred. One of the oxen slowly raised his massive head, as though awakening from a deep sleep, opened his mouth, and spoke in a deep, strange voice to the other. 8 days from now, our master will die. A chill like ice shot down the back of the listening farmer beneath the trough. He froze stiff, unable to believe what he had just heard. But before he could form a single coherent thought, the second ox snorted, his nostrils quivering, and said with a harsh, rasping voice, "Serves him right, the brute." In the next moment, both animals burst into wild, unrestrained bellowing, a sound full of eerie, ominous joy, as if they had revealed a dark secret and freed themselves from a curse. The farmer, however, had to realize that Christmas night had revealed to him a prophecy he would rather never have heard. Shaken to the core, the farmer crawled out from under the trough. As he stood and looked at the oxen, they now bellowed directly at him, still with the same strange joy as before. Their eyes glittered wildly, their thick necks stretched over the stall planks, and their roaring made the wooden walls tremble. The farmer's heart pounded up into his throat. His breath came in gasps, and dizziness overtook him. Panic-stricken, he backed away, nearly tripping over his own feet, and fumbled for the door as though seeking escape from a nightmare. Without thinking or looking back, he tore the barn door open and fled into the dark night. The wind struck cold against his face, but he scarcely felt it. Terrified, he ran toward his house while behind him the bellowing of the oxen echoed through the darkness like a sinister aftersound. When at last he shut the door of his home behind him, sweat stood on his brow. With trembling hands he collapsed onto a chair and desperately hoped that the animal's words meant nothing. But deep in his heart he knew otherwise. 8 days after Christmas night, on the very day the oxen had named, the farmer met a gruesome end. In the evening hours, a fire suddenly broke out in his farmhouse, and within moments, everything was ablaze. No one knows to this day how it happened. Some whispered of an accident, others of arson. But however the fire began, help came too late for the farmer. When the villagers saw the ominous glow of the flames and hurried to the spot, they could only witness the farmer's final moments. Through one of the windows they saw his shadowy figure inside the burning room, his arms raised in desperate appeal. His cries of agony were said to have torn through the night like screams of terror before he collapsed, dying in the flames. Only the two oxen could be saved from the barn, which, by fortune, the fire had not yet reached. Among the helpers were some who later swore they had seen something directly in front of the barn, a large black figure whose outline rose before them like a shadow, only to vanish soundlessly the next instant. Those who saw it recoiled in fright and fell silent, for no one wished to be the first to speak aloud what they believed they had recognized. Unlike the other villagers of Riedenheim, these witnesses believed that the farmer's end was neither accident nor crime, but the executed judgment of a power that is more present on Christmas night than on any other. The second fateful miracle was to befall a young bridal couple from Riedenheim, who had bound themselves in marriage only a few days before the holy Christmas night. Since childhood they had been friends, playing together in the meadows, exploring the woods, and over the years nurturing a tender affection. As they grew older, this childhood friendship blossomed into quiet love, and soon they dared to speak openly what their hearts had long known. And so they now stood before the altar of God, their hands joined, while the candles burned softly and gentle snowflakes fell past the church window. Never had they felt happier. The young people in the village spoke of a pair seemingly made for one another. The elders smiled and said such happiness was a blessing from heaven. And indeed it seemed as though a special radiance surrounded them, a warmth that softened even the cold winter day. After the wonderful wedding came the wedding night, and the young couple withdrew to their small shared chamber. They surrendered fully to their passion, undressed and lay down in their marriage bed. There the two united on that night, when the young man's staff of love found its way into the young woman's gate of love, and at last she received from him the seed of new life. Their first child was conceived. With Christmas night only a few days away, both were certain that their marriage and the new life within her stood under the special protection of divine powers. With this hope, they fell asleep entwined in each other's arms, filled with a love and peace known only to the newlywed. Yet on the very eve before Christmas night, on a night when love and peace should rest upon every home, the couple had their first quarrel. The young woman had heard of an old miracle said to occur at midnight. When the church bell strikes 12 and Christmas night begins, the water of the village well turns into wine. Such a thing must surely be a heavenly sign, she thought, and she wished to go to the well at that hour to bring some of the blessed drink home. Her husband, however, was alarmed by her intention. He did not trust the miracle and warned her earnestly. Not everything that occurred on Christmas night came from God, he said, for the forces of evil were near at that hour too, tempting people with deceptive signs. He begged her insistently to stay within the house and not venture into the cold night. Voices rose in anger. Harsh words flew back and forth for a time. At last the woman seemed to yield. She lowered her gaze, murmured a word of understanding, and the quarrel faded like a dying flame. Soon after, they lay down to sleep. He relieved, she, however, holding in her heart a decision she had not spoken aloud. For the young woman's agreement had been feigned. While her husband slept soundly, she lay awake, listening to the quiet. Shortly before midnight, she rose silently, dressed, took her basket, and slipped from the house without waking him. She went to the village well, where she stopped at the stone rim, her eyes fixed with hope on the handle of the winch. Hardly had the church tower begun to strike 12 when she set her hands upon the wooden grip and began to turn. 12 strokes rang through the night, and with each one the bucket rose higher. When it reached the well's edge, the young woman saw with her own eyes that the water had truly turned into wine. A joyful wonder seized her. Quickly she grabbed her jug and filled the miraculous drink into a large bottle she had brought with her. When the vessel was filled to the brim, she placed it carefully into her basket. Blissful with what she believed to be a divine gift, she turned toward home, unaware that something evil already waited for her in the darkness. She had not gone far, the basket on her back and her heart brimming with secret joy, when her steps suddenly froze. In the middle of the night road, directly before her, stood a black, terrifying figure. It wore a wide black hat adorned with a red feather, and its eyes burned like fire. A cold shock seized the young woman. She screamed and tried to flee, but before she could run, she was seized by hands with long, claw-like fingers. The figure pulled her close and spoke in a voice of wickedness. "In your basket you carry wine. For your sin, you now are mine." With a violent tug, the ominous being tore the basket from her back. The young woman cried out desperately for help, but no sound seemed to pierce the darkness. The black figure gripped her even tighter and lifted her up. In the next moment, the creature rose into the air with her, flying over the snow-covered rooftops until both vanished into the night. The young woman was never seen again. When her husband awoke the next morning on the very day of Christ's birth, and did not find his wife beside him in their bed, a terrible unease struck him. He leapt up, called for her, and finally rushed out into the snow-covered village in alarm. From house to house he ran, asking the few early risers in the streets, but no one had seen her. Only when he reached the well did he stop as if turned to stone. There, half buried in the snow, lay his wife's basket, and inside it the bottle of wine she had filled during the night. In that moment the young man understood without doubt what fate had befallen her. Utterly distraught, he returned to his home. Once he had closed the door behind him, he went to his bed and broke into bitter weeping. All that day, until deep into the evening, he wept for his lost wife, whom he had loved more dearly than anything on earth. When at last his tears ran dry, he knelt before the fire in the hearth and began to pray, for her soul, for light in the darkness, for mercy wherever she might now be. Every night thereafter he repeated this prayer for years until the end of his life. And the longer he prayed, the wider his heart grew. From his pleading for his wife sprang a prayer for all people in the world, that they might live together in love, peace, and kindness, resist the temptations of evil, and stand by one another. It is said his love and compassion became greater than that of any other in all the Franconian lands. And so he remained long remembered after his death, just as the wonders of Christmas night remained, reminding the people how close light and shadow lie.